Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse and Human Rights Abuses. I'm happy to be here. This is a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. It's Saturday morning, 7:30 here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta time. I'm just waking up and having some coffee and enjoying the start of the weekend, and happy to be able to do these shows. I know I missed last Saturday's show. I had some company in town, some good friends in town, and it was the last weekend they were here, so we had a few things scheduled and planned, and so I missed my show. And so I'm glad to be able to do the show. I found a whole mess of things to talk about, regarding the whole issue of the worldwide epidemic of child abuse and human rights abuses. Right? I study human rights. I'm in between courses at MRU and can't afford to go right now, but I still continue to look at the whole worldwide problem of women's rights, child rights around the world, and all human rights really, because I'm very interested in human rights for all, not just women or not just children. Protecting all citizens of the world. Right? It's so important because everyone deserves protection. Everyone deserves to live safely and have all the human rights that are afforded to them that people fought and died for. You know what I mean? The right to life, the right to shelter, the right to protection, the right to government, the right to food and clothing, water, the right to an education, the right to hospitalization and health care. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and sadly, so many people just don't have any rights, no human rights, period. Many countries just don't have anything set up in place. Even though there's laws and there's rules, nobody follows them and nobody upholds them. So when the laws are not upheld and no one cares about the treaties and whatnot that are drawn up and conventions that are drawn up, then of course you have all kinds of human rights abuses, right? And within North America, we see the problem, with child abuse and domestic violence and abuse against people. You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous that's going on in North America. Because we have the education, we have the programs, we have the money, the funds to help people, and yet it's not working, And you see some of these other countries where there's not a dime being put into it, except for what private citizens will try to do to help each other out, so for instance, domestic violence situations, people will open up their homes as a shelter for other women and children who have been battered and, things like that. But the government's not pitching out a dime, and they don't care if people are killing each other and women or children are dying. They just don't care. Whereas in North America, we have all of these programs in place, and yet we have such a huge epidemic on our hands. So what's the problem? You know what I mean? Like that's why I'm talking about this. That's why I just want to be one more voice out here addressing this situation. And do we have the answers? No. That's the whole issue. We need think tanks. We need people sitting around, new people, young thinkers, people with new ideas sitting around thinking, okay, what's not working? Let's not do that. What everyone needs to do really who's involved with human rights and the whole societal problem of relationships and why people are abusing each other and how to get the help to people that really need it. We need to study what's not working and then don't do it. And try something else, because it's obvious there's not much working out there. There's a few programs that are working, but they're not nationwide. And I've seen some good information out there regarding programs that, especially regarding child abuse, because that's mainly what I study. That they try to work with families, and there's a few programs that actually have proven that they do work. Problem being is that they're not nationwide. They're in certain school districts, certain counties in certain states down in the United States, and so it only helps a handful of people, and the rest just don't get any help. So we need to really build on the stuff that's working, forget the stuff that's not working, and move forward with that in the North American continent. And as far as the rest of the world, they need to step up and really start doing something to help themselves, because without the country's decision to go ahead and honor the laws that are in place and say, okay, we're going to start, enforcing these laws and making sure that women and children are not being raped all the time and killed and battered and murdered, and children are not being used as sex slaves, and they're not being taken as child soldiers and then used as sex slaves. This is absolutely ridiculous what's going on around the world, and we all know what's happening. We just have to open up the newspaper, turn on the TV, and it'll be there right in front of our face, right? It's absolutely horrible what's happening, and so that's why I just want to be one more voice, just to talk about this stuff. And we can change this. We really can, but it's going to take all of us. And we have to work in our own country as well. That's why I decided, I really wanted to be involved, nationally within Canada and the United States as well as internationally, because there's no sense in just helping other countries and not helping our own country. We need to work on our own country first, and then, if we have the resources and the time, we can help other countries. But our country is a mess. I know, Canada, there's so many problems up here, but nobody's talking about it. It's a great country. It's an absolutely wonderful, beautiful country. I love this country. It's just that nobody wants to acknowledge abuse, and you never even see anything on abuse up here. They don't want to talk about it. People are more interested in just having a good time. Nobody wants to think about these poor children who are being abused, and sex slave rings and sex trade situation going on. It's pretty big time up here in Canada, and it's absolutely ridiculous it's happening. You know what I mean? You think about some of these other countries, like especially like Asia, like Southeast Asia, especially, where the child sexual, the whole exploitation thing on children is huge down there, and everybody knows about it. But most people don't want to talk about the fact that it's happening here in Canada, it's happening in the United States, right? And it is. And it's absolutely ridiculous, and we have to stop it. We have the means and we have the funding to stop this mess, and why are we not doing it? Pretty much because nobody wants to get involved. You know what I mean? If more people got involved, we could really make a difference in this, I really believe that. But it's going to take masses of people, not one or two voices. That's why I'm just one more. I thought, what? I have nothing better to do. What's better what could I possibly be doing that I could think of that would be better than to be one more voice to say, look, we got to stop this. We need to get the education out. We need to get the awareness out and really get this thing going. We all need to become involved if we want to really change this thing for the better. And I believe that children deserve that opportunity. As adults, we have the choice we can make these choices to help ourselves out, and if we don't make the right choices for ourselves, then we need to find somebody who can help us to do that. But children, they don't have a choice. They're stuck with what they got. And so that's why it's so important that everyone take a look around and make sure that the children in their life is not, are not suffering and not being abused, right? It's so important. Adults have the choice. So, when an adult says, oh, I can't leave, I can't, this or that, right, out of fear or whatever, well, they can, but they might have to suffer for a while if they do leave the situation. But what's the difference, in a domestic violence situation or domestic abuse? The person, whether it's a woman or a man, is already suffering in that situation. So what's wrong with suffering a little bit longer to get your freedom? You might have to stay at a shelter. You might have to stay someplace that you don't like. You might have to leave all your stuff behind. Well, who cares, because you get your life back. And you get to keep your life, you know what I mean? So quite often people won't get help as adults because they think, oh, well, what if I have to sleep in a shelter or something, and so they just stay in the abuse without, thinking that they're either way. But if they stay in the situation, they could lose their lives. Whereas if they leave, they could eventually get their life back. But children don't have that option. They just don't. And so that's why it's so important that we do look out for children, right? And around the world, this is such a huge problem. I found so many great articles here. This is absolutely, actually, they're not great. It's just ridiculous how many there are. I have stuff popping into my inbox all the time. I set myself up to receive information so I don't have to go looking for it because for my studies, right? Because I was enrolled in classes and was taking courses, and I didn't want to have to take the time to look for the stuff, so it would just pop into my inbox all the time. And so I have things coming in daily about what's going on around the world and North America regarding child rights, human rights, women's rights. And there's a few articles I wanted to look at here today. One is called, it's from IRIN, IRIN, and it's called Swaziland, Children Still Share Jail Cells with Adults. I just wanted to take a look at that because this is something going on all around the world. And this is a humanitarian news and analysis from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And this is an article that was, it came out the 14th of July. And they said Swaziland's judiciary is concerned by an absence of detention facilities for children, which forces them to share jail cells with adult criminals. And like we see this going on all over the world, South America, that's a huge problem down there. South America, children, there's no separate detention centers really. There might be a few within the South America, but mainly children share the jail cells with adults, And these would be young children, like 8, 9, 10 years old, that gets caught stealing bread and they end up in jail or something. And this is the truth. All you have to do is do a little bit of studying. Just check it out, do a little bit of reading. And I know a lot of people don't like to read, but really sometimes we need to read so we can hear what's happening and get the facts, you know what I mean? The stuff, who wants to read about that? But you know what, though? We need to, because this is really sad. And within those countries, there's not very much protection. Even the people that do try to protect children end up a lot of times being killed just because they're making waves. The government doesn't like it, right? And we know this is happening everywhere. Afghanistan, all over the world, really. Children end up in jail with adults. And, there's risk for all kinds of child sexual abuse there because they're not being monitored. A lot of times children are actually put into the cells with the adult men. And I know that in Afghanistan, there was articles written about that where they saw children who were young boys, taken into the prisons just so that the men could use them for sex, you know what I mean? And the boys they wouldn't live there with them. They would just be assigned to a prisoner. So the prisoner would have his own sex toy. I mean, that makes me sick, and I can't believe that that's happening in today's world. It's 2010, not, 2000 BC. And, people need to get a grip and realize how incredibly wrong this is. And, what makes me even madder is that it's happening in North America. It makes me mad that it's happening around the world with people that have no education, are very ignorant and backward thinking, and just don't think that children actually have rights, which they do. What really makes me mad is it's going on in North America. People are doing this stuff in North America, pimping out children, and parents are pimping out their own children. And this is a fact. And when they get busted, instead of getting 5 or 10 years, a little slap on the wrist, you have to serve, at least half of your sentence and maybe a $2,000 fine. What they really should do is put them away for a very, very long time and never, allow them to really come out back in society again. I think people would think twice about what they're doing if they thought that they were going to get life, What do we do with these people? I don't know. Send them out for some hard labor, make them work, instead of sitting around in a jail cell picking up, an education on our tax dollars. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. No one has the right to pimp out a child, and that makes me sick that it's happening. And yet we have millions, probably millions of child pornographic images out there and a lot of it's done by parents taking videos and sexual pictures of their children and selling them or trading them on the net. And these are parents doing this, right? Not all, but quite a bit. Quite a lot of parents are involved in that. Just a bunch of sick people. I think that the laws need to be stricter, and I think that they need to start throwing a book at these people, especially in North America, because we do have rights and we do have to protect those rights. And I think that by just dismissing it as, they were just immature, they won't do it again. What they need to do is really slam maybe a few thousand of those people that are caught and convicted and found guilty, and make the sentences really harsh, and then advertise it around the nation, around North America and Canada, that if anyone is caught doing this, they will go away for life. They will never ever see freedom ever again, and that they will not do any good time in jail. They will just do hard time, and they will be forced to work, and they will be forced to work, like in chain gang type situations. I don't care. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, those people lose their rights when they do this stuff, and they could still be looked after. I'm not talking about abusing people. I'm just talking about the fact that we should make it really uncomfortable for people who are caught abusing children and using children for sexual purposes. And in these other countries, it's totally acceptable. People accept it. They think it's great. You take any country, especially Southeast Asia, they don't see anything wrong with making money on children at all. And a lot of times, most of the times, it is their family members who are picking up a few bucks to sell their child into the sex slave trade. And I mean, this is sad, but it's true. And you think about the whole situation. Well, can they afford to feed them? Well, then they shouldn't be having them. You know, you don't bring in a child into the world and then say, oops, we had too many, sorry, you have to go be a sex slave now. You know what I mean? What kind of a sentence is that they're putting on that child, you know? Now, the sad part is that we see on the TV quite often these pictures of these cute little kids, you know, who look all sad and they have tears in their eyes, but those are not the ones that we got to be concerned about. It's the ones that they get pictures of coming out of the brothels that we don't see, with the bruises and the diseases and the syphilis and the different diseases that they get from these people who are using them sexually. Now, those are the pictures they should be showing to the public so that the public can get a good idea of what's happening, because a lot of those kids will, you know, they're forced to have, like, you know, 50 customers a day. Now, can you imagine a 5-year-old child having 50 men or sexually abuse them per day? What it will do to their body. Now, let's get a grip here, you know what I mean? This is very serious, and it's something that we have to address, and we really have to talk about. So here they're talking about, you know, put these children in Swaziland sharing jail cells with adult criminals, right? They say, do we have facilities for keeping a minor? Inquired presiding High Court Judge Thomas Masuku during the recent trial of a 16-year-old boy, when it became apparent that the accused was being held in the same cell as adults in the northern town of Pigs Peak. And they said here, why should children be kept with adults? It is not right for children to be kept in custody in such circumstances. I have to repeat it over and over, Masuku said from the bench. Correctional Services spokesman Luke Malandisa acknowledged that 2 minors, one age 16 and the other age 17, were being held contrary to prison regulations at Pigs Peak. Under normal circumstances, that is not supposed to be the case, he said. In every correctional institution, there must be a wing to care for minors before being convicted and taken to the Madujani Juvenile Center, and another wing for female offenders before they are convicted and taken to the Mawelewela Women's Prison if found guilty, Malandiza said. And Swaziland's HIV/AIDS infection rate, the highest in the world, is reflected in the 12 or so detention and prison facilities scattered throughout the landlocked country. What is worrying is that children are vulnerable to being molested and abused by adult criminals, which is why they must be separated, Save the Children spokesman Elizabeth Kugololo told IRIN. I have raised this point again and again in the press and on the radio, the need for special facilities for minors under arrest and incarcerated for crimes. The police and the correctional services are not happy that I belabor this point, but something has to be done, she said. A lack of will, she says. These boys and girls are being housed for long periods of time with hardened adult criminals, Kagololo pointed out. Although the law caters for children to be confined separately, the lack of political will meant that it's not a reality. It's not a reality. See, that's the thing. The laws are there, but laws are only good if they're upheld, and the people will actually uphold them. And that's the case with laws. If no one upholds the law, then of course you've got no laws, right? Laws are only as good as the people that are upholding them. So if these prison officials are not going to uphold them and they're just going to put the kids in, the children, the minors in with the adult criminals, then, you know, that's what you're going to have. So then what you have is children who are being abused in with these adult criminals. And when they get out, what are they going to do? They're going to abuse children, more than likely. That's the way she goes. That's why abuse is passed on generation to generation. You know, and not all children who are abused sexually will go on to abuse other children sexually, but it can happen. And it's sad. And it's not even their fault because they were abused, and so then they go and they take it on, and then they repeat that pattern, and they repeat the abuse, right? And that's very sad. You know, not all of them will do that, but some do, and you know, it wasn't even their fault. So that's the thing. These people just, you know, really need to get a grip. And how do you get these other countries to do that? You know, it's really, really hard and difficult to get any other country's governments to even acknowledge that children have rights, you know, and that they have the right to life even, right? That's quite often argued, you know, that, you know, in some of these countries out here around the world that children, they don't care if children have rights or life, you know, they just feel that it's okay that a person should be able to kill their children, no problem. So that's the huge issue, right? How do you get other governments to see clearly that, you know, no child should suffer, right? And I think it's just because they're so used to suffering. Those countries, they're so used to suffering that they think it's just part of. They think it's okay. But see, we know different because we've founded North America based on a whole lot of hard work and people saying, no, we should have a good life. You know what I mean? We should not be hurting each other. We should have a good life. Everyone has the right to life and to protection, to enjoy life. You know what I mean? And what's wrong with that idea? You know, excuse me. It just seems like maybe, 1/3 of the world's population thinks that that's the way to go, and then 2/3 of the world's population thinks that that's not the way to go. Well, why would anybody think that that's not the way to go? You know what I mean? I have people argue with me on this. You know, and they say, why should we have a good life? I mean, what laws is there? You know, within this whole universe that says that we should deserve to have a good life? Pretty much because we know what feels good. If you know what I mean, we know what feels good. We know what love is. We know what truth is. We know what goodness is. We know what mercy is, compassion, and all that stuff, right? And so, because we know what it is, then we need to seek it. You know what I mean? If we never knew what it was, and we were just full of hate and, full of garbage and just making life miserable for ourselves and everybody else for eternity, then it wouldn't matter. But because we do know what it is, that's why we have to keep pursuing it. Because we know what the good stuff is. We know what love is, and we know what caring about people is. We know what freedom is, right? We know what it means, and we know what it's all about. Well, sadly, a lot of these countries don't know that, and they've never been told that. And so, and as a group of people, they are very uneducated. And it's not their fault. It's just the way the countries are going. They could be up with us. They could be up with everybody else, a lot of these countries, but they stay in this backward form of thinking, that says, oh no, we should just suffer, and the human condition is just all about suffering. I mean, well, I for one don't like to see people suffer, and two, I don't like to suffer myself. And since we have such a good thing going in North America and parts of the world, Western Europe and other places, even around the country where people would not think that it's happening, there's lots of countries that have some awesome stuff going on within them. But then some of these other countries that really stand out, that are always in the news, they need serious help. And I think it's all going to stem down to education. They grow up generation after generation suffering, so they just think that's life. You know what I mean? It's like when you abuse a child, and if you don't get that child any help, and that child stays in that abusive environment their whole entire life and never sees anything else, they will think that that is exactly the way life should be. If they don't know anything else, then they won't recognize that things are different outside of their world, and that's their condition. That is the way that they will behave. That's the way life will be for them. You know what I mean? And so that's what's going on in these countries, right? That children and women especially are being abused, mainly, because that's been their traditions and their culture for so long. They think it's okay. So then when you try to tell them, no, it's not okay to kill your wife and children, they just look at you like, what, really? Are you serious? Sure it is, And even the women, oh yeah, sure, if I'm bad, I deserve to be killed. And the kids are just like, oh yeah, sure, if my parents don't like me, then they should kill me. And this is really it's so bad. It's just brainwashing is what it is, and it's incredibly sad, that so many people live like that. And that's why we have to change this thing. And it's really going to take a lot of education is what it's going to do. They're going to have to come up to the rest of the world. They're going to have to come up to, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying they have to change every single one of their traditions, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous. That's what makes all these different countries so beautiful, right? Because they have these awesome different traditions and stuff. But I'm talking about just the rights to life, the rights to protection, the rights to safety, the rights to health care, the rights to act, to government, to not being persecuted and killed, and see, otherwise you can have a dictator who says, oh, that's okay, I'm just going to wipe out this country right next to me. Oh, it's only a couple million people, that's okay, we'll just wipe them out anyway, we'll just gas them, no problem. And we all know that that's not right. You know what I mean? The world knows that that's not right. So why would anybody think that it's okay to kill their children and to kill their wife and to kill other people like that? You know what I mean? It's wrong. So see, society really needs to start taking a look at this. This is serious. Each person who kills another person is basically being one of those dictators that we go track down and hunt down and take out. You know what I mean? And we see somebody, I would hope that we continue to do that. see somebody around the world, who's taken out, 20, 30, 40,000 people or 100,000, gassing them or killing them in some way. Quite often the Western world will stand up and say, hey, that's wrong, we're going to go get you, buddy, and they do. And that's good. That's what we need. Thing is no one's doing that to these people who are killing their children. The whole world's not standing up saying, hey, look at that person just killed their child. We better go get them, you know what I mean, and put them away for a very, very long time, or death penalty or something. Because you know what? It's just as wrong to kill one child as it is to kill 300,000 people in another country. Because killing somebody, murdering somebody is not right. And I don't care if it's one person, I don't care if it's one child, I don't care if it's one woman. That's the whole issue. People like to think because it's the masses, this, look at that dictator over there, killed 250,000 people. We got to go take that guy out, And yet the neighbor guy down the street can beat the crap out of his kids and kill them and his wife, and it's okay. No problem. No. He should be treated exactly the same as that dictator who killed the 250,000 people. Killing is killing, murder is murder, death is death. Why should we change the way we feel about it just because based on the numbers? You know what I mean? No child should have to suffer like that, and no woman should have to suffer like that, right? It's absolutely horrible. So yeah, we didn't get to cover too many articles. I had a whole bunch here, but we'll just save those for next time. I've got about 5 minutes left here. But they said that they always say, this is back in Swaziland with the kids in jail, right, with these adult criminals. They said they always say there's not enough money, but it seems there's always enough money to do other things. For example, children and women are taken to court in the same vans as hardened adult male criminals. The fact that men and women travel together this way is bad enough, she commented. Children must be fetched at the children's remand facility and taken to court by police officers, and not kept with adults on the excuse that those cells are closer to the courts, that Kajolo said. And child welfare activists said children accused of perpetrating crimes, and even those convicted of crimes, warranted special treatment. Some of us believe that, excuse me, my voice is terrible. Some of us believe that prisons are for reform and not just punishment, and young people are the best to be corrected. And that was from Joyce Ngwani, a part-time teacher and abused children's counselor in the commercial hub, Manzini told IRIN. And they have their whole lives ahead of them, she said. No one who is not yet convicted of a crime should suffer punishment, which is what is happening to the children defendants who are housed with adult criminals. And so that was a good article. I really liked it. And I like that IRIN. That's some good information on there. And it's what's the UN's humanitarian news and analysis, right, of the whole world. And they got all kinds of stuff on there from Africa, Asia, the Middle East, plus news, film and TV, radio, just everything. It's a great website. I really like it. It's full of all kinds of great information every day, updates all the time. And I guess we'll continue on next week looking at, I want to look at another article that I found. And actually there's two of them. And they are signs, there's UN signs child protection pact with key rebel group in Darfur, and that's for the child soldiers, right, to stop the child soldiers. You can get that at www.un.org. And UN Advocate welcomes formation of committee to protect Afghan children in conflict. That's also another one I want to take a look at for next Saturday. From the same thing from the UN, www.un.org. So they have some great information on there for anybody who's interested in worldwide rights, like human rights, child rights, right? So we have about a minute left. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Please check out our website at www.dreamcatchersforAbusedChildren.com, and learn the signs and symptoms of abuse. Learn how to report child abuse. You never know when a child's going to come to you, and or that you would have the opportunity to save a child's life if you knew the signs and symptoms, if you knew how to report it properly, right? And you just never know when a child would come to you and tell you that they're being abused. It could happen. And then what would you do? How would you handle it? There's certain ways to handle it, right? And you can get that information from lots of different websites. There's great information out there, but ours is another one, and I am particularly biased about our website, It's updated daily, so that's the thing. It's not old information. It's just updated all the time. So, check it out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And if you need any resources or information, get a hold of us. You can get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio. Be sure and tune in tomorrow night for, not tomorrow night, but Monday night for Elizabeth Brawley and myself will be on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And otherwise, have a great weekend and take care of yourselves, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be talking to you real soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.